So with the full release of Backpack Battles, we get a bunch of new items, both neutrals, but also for Ranger and Reaper, including class items and new things to craft. Now, through it already, I discovered the crafting recipes, and I'll show you exactly what everything is that you gotta know. I'm gonna start with the neutrals. This is sorted by price, so these are things that anyone can find and play all 4 of the classes. Now, as you will see, the early game is still the same, all of the cheaper items, none of that changed. But once I scroll down here, this is 8 gold, you see a Vampiric Potion. Now, Vampiric Potion, when both characters drop below 80% of health, so very interesting, you need both to be low, which is pretty hard to guarantee, but if that happens, you consume this, gain 1 Vamp, and steal 5 life. So it's a potion with Vampiric synergies, which we have not really seen anything like that. Again, you can stack this. It doesn't seem great, like gaining 1 Vamp is so little. Blood Amulet gains you 2 Vamp. Obviously, with Hunger Blade, you can gain a bunch more Vamp. Like 1 Vamp is very minimal. And stealing 5 life, also very minimal. So this doesn't seem like a great potion. Stealing 5 life is basically a 10 health difference between you and your opponent. And again, this being met is pretty tough, like you being below 80 and them. It happens in most fights, but you cannot guarantee this against some builds that maybe spam like a bunch of armor or whatever. So it does not seem consistent. Again, you can put this in a potion chain, you can trigger this multiple times, still not great. I think it does scale a little bit with like other things that increase healing, like with red gems, your 5 life that you steal will steal a little bit more, I think, or at least heal more from the 5 life that you stole. It just doesn't seem good. What it could be used for is just a trigger for other potions. So you and your opponent dropping below 80 might happen early, so you could use this to trigger some sort of potion chain, maybe some strong stone skin potions in case you're playing Ivy or whatever. But I don't think you really need to be playing this when playing Vamp. Maybe though. It's still 8 gold. I think 8 gold is pretty expensive for this effect. Then when we scroll down, a more expensive potion is the Divine Potion. So basically we're getting more potions for anyone to use. If you have at least 20 debuffs, consume this and cleanse 10. So you do not cleanse all of it, but it's pretty good against mainly poison. Like the debuff that most people play against you, or at least Reapers do, is poison. So if you have 20 poison on you, you're gonna cleanse at least 10, which isn't everything, but again, you can stack this, you can have this trigger multiple times, you can have this trigger other potions. So the fact that it's a potion, you always gotta keep in mind, even if the single effect isn't that great, you can do some sort of chain with it and cheat some bonus effects. But yeah, this is mainly good against poison. The other debuffs that you gotta be careful of is blind, although reaching 20 blind doesn't happen that often. Usually it's like at most 10 blind, but again, this could be mixed with other debuffs. And cold you don't see a lot at all, although Reaper did get something that can inflict cold, which we will see later, so this could be used against that as well. It's mainly tech, like if the meta is just going to be a bunch of debuff heavy builds like Dark Saber or like a Poison Bomb or whatever, this will probably be good to pick up, be good to play, and that's about it. It's not like build defining. Like a lot of these other potions, like stamina potions are important for certain builds, poison potions are important for certain builds. This doesn't need to be in a build, it's mainly in case you want to be careful of what you're facing. Then when we scroll down here, we see Gloves of Power. Now this is just gloves combined with a stone skin potion. So stone skin potion got another crafting recipe. It recently got the stone cap as well. But what this does is instead of normal gloves, which gives 20% speed on both sides, it deals 20% extra damage on both weapons. So you cannot put just anything on the sides, it has to be a weapon. But 20% damage could scale pretty quickly on a greatsword. That is a lot. I'm just saying, you know, or any other weapon. Unlike a wood sword, it's trash. Like something with super low DPS already, you don't want to play this on it. Like a whetstone is better because it just gives you raw damage more. I think whetstone on wood sword is like close to 50% damage increase. Anyway, there's one downside. It does make the weapons attack 10% slower, which is kind of significant because then you might even not benefit from the damage increase, right? If you get plus 20 damage but 10% slower attack speed, you might not even gain any damage at all. Another benefit though is that whenever the weapon attacks, you gain 2 armor. So you could do armor synergies with this. If you have really fast weapons on the sides, of course you're going to make them slower, but you can gain a bunch of armor with that. So this is preferably used on weapons that go slow and have high DPS already if you want to go for the plus 20% damage increase. But in case you're playing a defensive build, like you can get this on any class again. So maybe maybe if you play a Reaper and you don't care about the damage from your weapons, you just kind of have them, like you're playing double torch, but then you're playing Goobirds with it, or a poison or a fatigue package. Maybe you play this for the armor gain. Like imagine a bunch of gloves of power in between two weapons just to gain a lot of armor very quickly. I could see that being good. So there's two ways that you can look at this, which I think is interesting. I like the idea a lot, and I think it's going to be more played for the armor than for the plus damage, but hey, what do I know? Then when I scroll down more, next to the stone helm, we have stone armor. Now, stone armor is made with leather armor plus stone skin potion, so the third stone skin potion recipe, or I guess fourth, I should say. This is a really interesting one as well. Stamina usage increased by 20%, so you are gonna be using a lot more stamina, because I guess the lore is, you know, you're holding heavy armor, is gonna be more stamina usage. I kind of like the idea of it and the concept behind it, but this seems really bad in a lot of builds because you already struggle with stamina most of the time, especially with how much shields are played right now. I don't know how it'll be when full release hits, like maybe shield consumption will be less, or people will be playing it less, but I don't think you want to be making this. So the battle gain 80 armor, so you just gain a bunch more armor, almost twice. On attacked melee, so whenever you get a melee attack onto you, you have a 30% chance to remove a spike from your opponent. So it could be a spike counter. Ripsaw Blade is still just way better. Ripsaw Blade does use a lot of stamina, so I guess you could make the calculations now. Is it better to run a high stamina weapon or run this and have a slightly more increased stamina usage, you know? And also, once your health drops below 50%, you gain armor equal to 30% of your missing health once. So at first it's not going to be a whole lot, but of course the longer the game goes on, the more total health that you'll have, and the more armor that you're gonna get to replace that health. You can also boost your health with heart containers, right? They can give you 80 max health. You can do it in other ways with like pigs or vamp crystals or mana potions as well. There's a bunch of ways that you can increase your health and gain more armor from this once you drop low. So this seems just a very defensive piece in case you care more about the armor and the spike removal, I guess, and less about the stamina. So again, this can be played on any character. This does not seem like a ranger item. This seems way more like something a Reaper would do. Like a Fatigue Reaper could be doing this easily if you gain a bunch of health. It's actually very interesting. I haven't really looked at the two other classes yet, so I can't really comment too much on how all of these new items will play in those two classes. We'll look at that later. But yeah, this seems like it just works only in a very defensive build that again doesn't care about weapon damage because of the stamina increase. So there's kind of a similar logic to the Gloves of Power. Now there's one more neutral item, which is Moon Armor. Now this is Holy Armor combined with a Mana Orb, so really expensive. Start of battle, you gain 40 armor and plus 20 armor for each stored magic item. So at the start it's not that much armor, but again you can increase it if you have magic items around it, which could be a moon shield, which again also gives a plus 30% armor increase, so some cool synergies there. Also every 3 seconds, so instead of cleansing poison, which is what the normal holy armor does, it gives you 2 mana and it reflects 2 debuffs. So it's another way to consistently gain mana. 2 mana every 3 seconds isn't a whole lot, but it's something, you know, especially next to a moon shield. You know, this will also give mana for armor gained, synergies again. And reflecting 2 debuffs is just a bonus. Like if you play mana builds, you often don't really care too much about debuffs, right? Except for Darksaber. Darksaber kind of needs mana and wants debuffs, so I guess this would work really well with a Darksaber, although you're not gonna have that many magic items with it usually. But yeah, it just seems like a nice defensive piece overall, but I don't know how actually useful this will be. I just think mana orbs are better off used for moon shields or for just playing it raw. Like you're not even gonna gain that much armor from this most of the time, and the debuff reflection again could be good in certain matchups, but that's about it. So now it's time to check out Ranger, because even though these classes have been around for a while, you can instantly see a bunch of new things. Now you can see 3 animals here right away. Now the thing is, you can't find these in the shop normally. You can only find this when you take the special item, like the unique that you find on turn 8. So I'm not going to look at these yet until we see the unique, but one of the first things that we see is a short bow. So we get a new weapon that is just ranger only. It is kind of like a wood sword. It deals 1.5 DPS. Cooldown is 1.7, so slightly slower than a wood sword. I think that damage is slightly higher than a wood sword as well. Wood sword is 1.4, so yeah, it's just a slightly better wood sword. It's a ranged weapon though, so it does not trigger spikes, it does not trigger shields, which is a really big deal. The stamina is also much lower than a wood sword, so it's just preferable. Of course, wood sword builds into hero longsword and falcon blade and steel goobert and things like that, which this does not. But as you can see, there's 2 other bows, actually 3 other bows that you can build into. Accuracy is only 85, so it is slightly lower, but shouldn't be too big of a deal. It's a really good item because you could play 2 of these without even having to think about a banana. If you run 3 of these, you might not even need a banana still to not stem out, because again, shields don't trigger. So it's a really great early item, especially knowing it builds into Tusk Poker, which is kind of like Tusk Piercer. It's very interesting. It's like just tiny versions of the existing bows right now. But this is built with the bow plus a Tusk, obviously. The damage is still very low. It's still 1.5 DPS. Stamina stayed the same at 0.4. Accuracy is still low at 85. And cooldown is also the same. So everything basically stays the same. The only difference is that on hits, you have 50% chance to gain a spike. So this does work with some sort of spike setup. If it goes really fast, you have chances to inflict more spikes, while Tusk Piercer consumes spikes in order to gain damage. So actually, there is some synergy between playing Tusk Poker and Tusk Piercer together, now that I think about it. But yeah, in case you need some early spike gain, seems pretty strong. And then you have Fortuna's Hope. So the baby version of Fortuna's Grace is made with 2 clovers and the bow. What is it called? A short bow. DPS is the same again at 1.5. Stamina is the same. Accuracy cooldown, so nothing changes. The only difference is on hit, it has a 50% chance now to gain luck. So instead of spike, you can gain luck. Which I think is less relevant early unless you have acorn colors already, but that's not early. But I don't think it's terrible. I think it's all right, although I think your clovers are probably better off used somewhere else, like on a pig or Fortuna or as a nature item. I don't think Fortuna's Hope is as great as the Poker potentially to build into something. I mean, 50% to gain a luck, sure, but you can also just play arrow, right, and play better weapons. But I don't think it's that bad. Now, I'm gonna first look at the other bow, and then we're gonna look at the uniques, which is Belladonna Shade, so baby version of Belladonna's Whisper, which is, of course, made with the short bow and the poison flask. Now, this one, compared to the others, does have higher damage. It deals 3.5 DPS, so 2 more DPS than the others, so it's actually a big difference. Stamina stay the same, accuracy and cooldown as well. And on hit, it has 50% to inflict a poison, so all similar effects. This could scale poison in case you're doing Ivy mainly, right? Or Dark Saber, or maybe just with Belladonna. It's very interesting how all of the bows kind of work together really well. So you could play the short bow and the normal bow version with it. Obviously, Belladonna would scale on the damage. Now, Belladonna would not like to point towards this because this never deals 9 or more damage and doesn't really increase poison. Nice early again setup piece. So now the uniques. The 2 new uniques that Ranger gets. First of all is a big bowl of treats. Every 4 seconds you gain 2 random buffs and make the stored food item trigger 5% faster up to 100%. So just like Bird speeds up shit, you know, in its area 5%, but it caps out at 35, I think. Oh, it's up to 40%. So this again increases every 5% or every trigger 5% up to 40. Now this goes a little bit slower. It's every 3 seconds, so it takes longer for the food to trigger faster. Food builds also aren't good on Ranger. Now, I'm thinking of this thing, Pandemonium. Pandemonium wants food to trigger, and every time the food triggers, you inflict poison. So it does have synergy with that you make food trigger faster, which would be more poison with Pandemonium. I still don't think this will ever make Pandemonium good. It seems very extra, just a nice bonus. And gaining 2 random buffs, also kind of a nice bonus, but I don't think you're ever taking this bowl for this effect. Like this 4-second trigger is just a bonus. What is really important is the Friends of the Forest can appear in the shop, which are the free pets that are just skipped. Those can start appearing and you can start buying them. All pets have a 30% chance to activate twice as well, so every single pet can double trigger, and pets are goobers. So you can double trigger goobers, 30% only. You can increase this with lucky pigs though. Pets as well, if you take a look, are the new ones, but also Bird is a pet and Dragon is a pet, so you could trigger Bird twice, go for even faster speed, Dragon, and Wolpertinger, meaning you can get way more buffs with him as well. So all of that is very nice bonuses if you think about it. So now it's time to look at the pets, right? Like, what do you get offered in the shop now and what is gonna double trigger? The first one is a rat. Now this is a common. Also, I need to point out these are commons, rares, and epics, which at this stage in the game, commons are pretty low to get. Like after round 8, your odds of hitting a rare or a common is lower than hitting like epics. So rats are harder to get than hedgehogs after a couple turns. But yeah, rats, basically every 3 seconds it deals 5 damage. So not high DPS, you don't think you want to play this for the 5 damage, but it has a 50% chance to inflict a poison. So you could, again, play this if you want to go with some poison package. 15% chance to inflict a blind as well, so that's way lower. I don't think you play this for blind synergies, it's just a small bonus. But it triggers 20% faster for each pet or food item around it. So again, you can speed this up if you have more pet items. And again, it can double trigger. So let's say if a bunch of rats, you have this thing, they all speed each other up, they double trigger. You can actually start inflicting a lot of poison real quick, and I guess a bunch of damage. And also, if they double trigger, if you put a Goobert next to it, the Goobert is gonna trigger like crazy, and the Goobert can also double trigger. Ooh, I have a build idea in mind already. But yeah, this actually looks like it could snowball pretty quickly. Squirrel, every 4 seconds you steal a random buff. Seems really bad. It's a very slow trigger. Stealing random buffs, not that relevant. And it also triggers 20% faster for each stored pet or food item. So this doesn't seem great. Also, it is an L shape. I think this is the first time we see an item shaped like this. Then the last one is Hedgehog. Hedgehog is the epic every 5 seconds, so the cooldown keeps increasing. Deal 10 damage. Now 10 damage, obviously more than 5, but again, it's slower, so the DPS is still only 2 DPS is pretty bad, but it's increased by spikes, so it's kind of like a whip increases damage by spikes. So does this. This only increases 0.5 per spike, and again, important to point out that this will go faster for start pet and food items. So you can make this go a lot faster. Then of course the DPS increases by a lot, and you can increase it with the spike gain. Once your health drops below 70%, you also gain 1 spike and 10 armor. Pretty bad, like only 1 spike once you drop low. A spike shield just gives you 3 spikes at like whenever you get attacked into already. So you don't pick this for the spike gain, you just pick this mainly as a damage dealer that could scale with spikes. But keep in mind, if you play a spike build and a bunch of hedgehogs and you can double trigger them, and I mean with spikes, I don't know, you kind of want to play poison ivy, but maybe you consider picking this now instead. Again, spikes can be counted though. Ripsaw blade is a thing, but there's going to be 4 classes now, which I don't know if all of them want to be playing Ripsaw on every build. So in case there's less Ripsaw blade, this seems kind of good, like it can kind of snowball. But I think the rats honestly has most potential. And then let's look at the other unique, which is the Mega Clover. This is a really interesting effect. Shop enter, generate 2 lucky clovers. So every time you go from combat back in your shop, you get 2 lucky clovers, which you can just play, right? It gives you luck, but you can also sell it. So basically this generates you 2 gold a turn. If you look at it that way, which is the same as playing 2 pigs. Which is okay. I don't think it's worth picking the unique just for that though. But the clovers can build, of course, into like bows or into more lucky pigs or into a lot of other things, right? But that's of course not the only effect. The sale chance is plus 8%. We haven't seen anything else that can increase sale chances right now. This can. You might get items cheaper in the shop. So this is just a very greedy pick. If you pick this, you're basically saying, I'm ahead, I'm going to build something strong, I'm going to generate a bunch of clovers, a bunch of luck, a bunch of money, I'm going to save more money with sale chances. And that's not where it ends. Your chance to find uniques is plus 20%. So that's a lot. You might actually end up finding a unique most of the time. 20% on top of the additional percent that you already have. You can even play platinum customer cards still with this to scale it even higher. You are actually pretty likely to find at least 1 unique. Maybe late though, like this is after round 8. You want to find uniques early because you can build around them. Very often, if you find like a villain sword way too late in the game, it's hard to pivot into it, for example, or gingerbread Jerry. There's so many bad uniques that this is probably not worth taking. Like a lot of uniques that I find, I often just end up skipping because I would have to make my build worse to build into it. So as long as uniques aren't that good though, and again, finding them late isn't great, this is probably not worth picking for that. But it's good for content, you know, if I want to play a unique game, this is the way to go. But it's mainly a greedy pick. I think this will just be picked in the off chance that you think you can high roll something. And then there's one last thing, and that's whenever you reach 20 luck, which isn't too hard on Ranger, especially you're gonna get so many lucky clovers. Although you cannot play arrows, so you cannot generate luck this way, you would have to find different ways to get it. You gain 40 other random buffs. Mana Orb gives you like 12 random buffs. 40 is insane. It's actually ridiculous if you think about it. Now this could just be mana, so like you could gain 10 mana and then 30 other random buffs, but still, this is ridiculous. So if you can somehow start combat with 20 luck, which is 10 rounds, right? If you gain 2 lucky clovers, or if you buy every lucky clover early, let's say in 6 rounds, if you save all your lucky clovers, let's say 7 or 8 actually, that's more realistic. Then you gain 40 random buffs later. That is like deep in survival already, so it's not very reliable to gain a build on it. But what if you play double Fortuna's Hope and they skill your luck? Then suddenly, bam, you have 40 random buffs. This is actually really cool to think about. Not very consistent, probably not incredibly good, but funny. We'll have to see. But that is Mega Clover, and I think treats, which are the 2 items that, or uniques that Ranger cannot find as well. And that's it for Ranger. Now let's take a not insanely good or reliable by any means, but debuff, with the reflecting free debuffs, I guess it's not incredibly good unless you play like Dark Saber, or I guess it's reflect or just cleanse, so it's a bit more useful. But this is more tech, right? You don't need this in any build necessarily. And reflecting free debuffs, you probably want to discard a bit later, because if you move too early, you might not have any debuffs on yet. So it's a little bit weird because you can't play like a craft period, so you can too early. I just don't think this will see a lot of play because I don't know if what kind of build you can play this. I guess it's right early in case you just take free poison that everyone put on you, put it on that instead, and steal 2 buffs that they could have, which could just mana. It just doesn't seem great. I think other systems slightly better. Now we also got 2 new dolls. We got Misfortune. Every 3 seconds you use a luck to gain 2 buffs of the type of which you have the most. Now luck and Reaper is not really something that is played a lot. You can gain luck mainly with deck of cards and with ace of spades, so it's gonna be a little bit tough to get a lot of luck to make this work. But getting 2 buffs of which you have the most, so you can kind of help this to scale. Let's say heat. Let's say you're playing Heat Reaper, you play like a Charizard and some ace of spades and deck of cards, so you have a lot of luck, you gain some heat, and this will keep giving you more and more heat consistently. Then maybe in Chonk Reaper, if that becomes a thing, you play chonks, you play deck of cards. I don't know what other buffs you would want, like mana gain this could be used for. Again, you need luck though to keep getting mana with this. Regen, spikes isn't really that insane. Vamp, I guess. Vamp Reaper with Hungry Blade. Deck of cards is played with Vamp, so maybe it's deck of cards, Bloodthorn, Misfortune, gives you spikes and the Vamp or the regen. It's cool, it's interesting, but I don't think it will see that much play just because you gotta play deck of cards, which is not good right now. You gotta find ways to gain luck on this with this class. But we also got Mr. Struggles. So Mr. Struggles now has a wife. Every 5 seconds remove 1 buff of each type from your opponent, which is pretty significant. Now 5 seconds is very slow though, so you probably want to find a way to speed this up somehow, but 1 buff from each type of each type is just a very flexible counter, right? Also, it is not super expensive. It's I think 7 gold. Yep, both of these are 7 gold, so it's just good tech. It would remove well, regen, luck, spikes. You can see it in the right here, I'm not blocking it, but all of these can just be removed. So in case you play against Bloodthorn or Vamp, or against, well, a lot of builds, especially on Ranger, I would say, rely on a lot of buffs, right? Like you can remove luck so they don't crit anymore. Mana builds you can counter with this. So if you play a bunch of Mrs. Struggles, it's just a very decent way to counter builds. So Reaper is just getting a lot of tools to counter right now. Not really something that you build around. Like you don't build a build around Mrs. Struggles. I guess Fatigue, right? This is not bad in Fatigue builds, just to make sure your opponent doesn't ramp up as quickly. But yeah, it looks nice, looks interesting. I think this will see some play. And then we have a Strong Mana Potion. Now, I was gonna try and figure out how to craft this, because there's some other strong potions here as well, but I wasn't able to find a crafting recipe until I realized that if I turn off crafted items, they disappear. And that is because these potions cannot be crafted. There is a new unique item that you will need in order to get these potions. So let's just jump straight to that. First, we have Cauldron. Every 5 seconds you heal for 10 or you gain 3 mana or 2 heat. Very extra, like healing for 10 every 5 seconds doesn't seem great. Gaining 3 mana or 2 heat, also very extra, not reliable. So you don't play this for this effect, right? You see stars around it, it triggers 50% faster for each starred food. So if you have food around it, this will trigger faster. Again, not super relevant because the effects are kind of meh. Although heat, I guess heat is like the most relevant, but it's a 1 in 3 that you get heat. But yeah, gaining 2 heat pretty fast, I guess would be okay. But here's the thing, shop entered. So whenever you go out of combat again in the shopping phase, it will upgrade an adjacent potion. It can only upgrade 1 at a time. I've tried this, and this is the way that you can consistently, let's say, upgrade like Pestilence Flask, Demonic Flask, which you can already upgrade with just crafting recipes. But you can also upgrade 3 new potions that previously you can't get to. One of them is that Strong Mana Potion. It's just a normal mana potion next to the Cauldron. You gotta wait a turn and it upgrades. Basically, once mana is used, or health drops below 50%, so same requirements as the normal mana potion. You consume this and gain 6 mana and 15 max health. So we just gain slightly more mana. Sure, right? It's just extra. It's just an upgrade that there's no reason to not make it, so you have access to it, but it doesn't suddenly make it like insane. And let's actually take a look at the 2 other mana potions first before we go to the other unique. We have strong vampiric potion. So we saw the vampiric potion earlier, any class has access to it. Now when both characters drop below 80%, same requirement. Consume this and gain 1 vamp, so still same amount of vamp, still pretty bad, I would not pick it for this. And 10% lifesteal for 5 seconds. So this is already a better effect though than just stealing life, it steals 5 life before. 10% lifesteal is kind of good, especially if you have Locklifter with it, if you're playing Bloodthorn or whatever. It's only for 5 seconds, so it's not going to be during the entire fight, but you're going to steal a lot of life very quickly. This would work pretty well with an unhealing build as well. So 10% extra lifesteal for 5 seconds once you're playing unhealing. Kind of nice, although unhealing doesn't really play vamp. Unhealing plays other sources of healing. So again, very extra. I don't think this suddenly enables a certain kind of build. And then the last potion you can upgrade is the Divine Potion into Strong Divine Potion. If you have at least 20 debuffs, again, same requirements, consume this and cleanse 12 debuffs and gain 4 random buffs. So you cleanse 2 more debuffs, very minor again, and you gain 4 random buffs, which could backfire because again, sometimes you don't want to play healing to counter poison flasks, but random buffs most of the time are just they're whatever, they're okay. So the upgraded potions here aren't insane. Cauldron is not that good, like the effect that it has isn't good. It's again mainly if you just have a great potion setup. Let's say you're playing a bunch of poison flasks already, you can just upgrade them for free. But yeah, I don't think this will suddenly make like a potion reaper or a food reaper or whatever you want to play with is viable. Yeah, it will probably get buffed. Then the other unique item that reaper is going to get is a snake. It's just called snake, which I think is kind of funny. It has a 5% chance for each luck to protect poison on your opponent from being cleansed. So again, you gotta find luck with this, which is not easy on Reaper. Main way is again deck of cards. It's kind of like corrupted armor, which can also protect your debuffs from being cleansed. This is the same thing, but it uses luck instead of surrounding dark items on the corrupted armor. So yeah, in case you're playing poison, I guess this helps a little bit against people who are countering poison. It's a counter to a counter, which at what point does this get another counter? It's very interesting. Like if you have enough clovers, no one can counter your poison, I guess. And then what's the, you can't really play counter poison against poison. Okay, I'm going too deep now. Start a battle, you gain 4 luck, so this is a way to instantly start with the 4 luck, which gives you 20% already protection against cleanse and 30 maximum health for each stored pet. So you can play pets around this. These are not pets, they're dolls, so you would have to find like dragons or goobirds or maybe a bird. Also every 2 seconds inflict 2 poison, so 1 poison per second. Actually not terrible, especially if one of your pets is a bird and you speed this up. If this goes fast enough, you're gonna inflict a lot of poison that will be protected from cleanse. So usually when you play Poison Reaper, you play like dagger and some weapons like Dark Saber to just crit with it. You get more damage, you turn your poison into a source of damage. Also this gives random debuffs, or you would play this to maybe inflict poison back that is put onto you, but Mr. Struggles doesn't see a lot of play anymore, or lifesteal. But yeah, now we actually have like a poison item, I guess, for Poison Reaper. And then there's one more thing that we're gonna look at, and that is the Ice Dragon. Now this one is made with just a normal dragon combined with the Blue Eyes White Dragon card, so you want to play deck of cards well for both Chunk now and for Ice Dragon. If you compare the DPS, it is the same. I mean, the damage is the same, they use 0 stamina, but this cooldown is slower. Well, this cooldown is 2 seconds. So the DPS overall is slightly slower. This would also scale up its damage faster because of the heat, but this inflicts cold, so every hit it inflicts a cold. Now this stacks differently than the heat because heat goes kind of exponential, it goes faster and faster on itself, and this gives stun chance. While this, if your opponent reaches 20 cold, you gain 50 armor. So it seems worse. Now of course with enough cold your opponent is going to be unable to do anything, but this doesn't scale as exponentially as this does, so it just seems slower. Also, cleanses, like we saw, there's a lot of items that can cleanse debuffs, potions now as well. So they can just cleanse or block your cold. Like they could even be playing Poison Ivy for that matter. While this gives you buffs, and you, like getting buffs or cleansing buffs from an opponent is less common, happens less. So that's why Heat and Chunk is probably still more consistent. And gaining 50 armor, it's good. This is more like a defensive dragon. I don't think it's bad. I think it could still, you know, win and snowball. But I think the stun chance is also still just better. It's interesting. I just don't think it's as good as Chunk, but we have cold synergies now. We could work something out with cold. And this is the cold item that I talked about, by the way, earlier. So yeah, new dragon for Reaper. That's the only other dragon that they get. And that is all the items for Ranger, Reaper, and Neutrals. That's all the crafting recipes and everything that you need to know. I'm going to look at Pyromancer and Berserker in the next video, so make sure you subscribe if you want to catch that and watch me play all of this stuff. Thank you for watching. Hope you have a good day.